right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I want to talk about today is the latest physique update from Akim the Beast Williams. Akim, to me, has been probably the most improved and most impressive standout bodybuilder of the past year, with his performance at the 2020 Mr. Olympia taking 6th place. Extremely impressive what he was able to do at the Olympia. Probably one of the best physiques he's ever brought to an IFBB stage. I think a lot of people counted him out. I think he was extremely underrated in 2020. Even myself, I'll admit, I counted him out for that Olympia and didn't consider him as a top 6 possibility. And that was a mistake, and I will never count out Akim Williams again because of the physique that we're seeing from Akim lately. It seems like he's putting together the recipe for, one, nailing conditioning, and two, if you look at him even when he's not conditioned in off-season, like these pictures that we're seeing from Akim right now, and I think he's preparing for a show. We know he's not doing the New York Pro. He said that in the comment section of this post. I personally think he's preparing for the Chicago Pro, although he has not announced that yet. Just for example, if you go back to last year, he competed at last year's Chicago Pro. That was the show he actually won to qualify for last year's Mr. Olympia in 2020. And that's the show where he beat some pretty good bodybuilders. I mean, in that lineup, you had Nick Walker making his pro debut. Nick wound up taking, I believe it was 4th place. So Akim beat Nick. Akim beat Max Charles. Johnny Jackson was in that lineup. So Justin Rodriguez also in that lineup. So it was a very good performance from Akim, and he kind of came out of nowhere, beating all these guys that everybody was talking about. And I think he's going to do the same thing again this year, and probably jump in that Chicago Pro. Like I said, we know he's not doing New York, and that Chicago Pro isn't until July of 2021, so he's got a few months. He's got a while to prepare for that show, and based on these pictures, he looks like he's probably a while away from a show. He certainly doesn't look like he's like within 6 weeks out from a show, but he does still look extremely impressive, and I gotta harken back to this front double bicep here. I gotta say, when Akim comes in condition, he's very impressive, but this front double bicep from a structure standpoint, not even accounting for condition, but from a structure standpoint, just look how crazy this front double is, how thick his lats are from the front, how small his waist is for a guy that is as massive as Akim is, the V-taper that he has, just the mass that Akim carries. When he's able to bring that mass in shape and condition, this dude, I think he's still got a little bit of work to do as far as improving upon that 6th place Olympia placing. But if he comes completely shredded, imagine this physique as shredded as like Hadi Chupin at the Olympia. Imagine it. Striations in the chest, striations in the bicep and the arms, super deep ab cuts. This guy, I mean, it would be insane if we saw it. His conditioning was good in 2020, but it still wasn't phenomenal. But you just look at this front double bicep, and the first thing I think is, man, this is one of the best front double biceps in the history of bodybuilding. I mean, just look how impressive and dominant it is. His forearms, his biceps, the tricep sweep, his chest looks insane. His lats look insane. His waist looks insane. This is a dominant front double bicep pose. And I think we're going to see big things from Akim this year in 2020. And again, that 6th place placing last year did not qualify him for this year's Mr. Olympia, so he does need to either earn points or win a show to get to this year's Mr. Olympia. So he does need to compete before October to get to that Olympia stage. So I think likely that will be the Chicago Pro. Now, speaking of the Chicago Pro, another bodybuilder who's going to be making his return to the stage at the Chicago Pro will be Sergio Oliva Jr. He's talked about it a couple times on his Instagram stories, recently posting this story saying, "Me showing up to the Chicago Pro and reminding these bitches just because I didn't do any of these weak COVID shows last year, this is my show." And then he also posted a physique update, presumably a recent physique update, a side chest, which he posted on his actual feed and not on his story. He says the best way to get what you want in life is to deserve it. Now, Sergio is a guy that we have not seen compete since the 2020 Arnold Classic. He's a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing compete again. He was very impressive at the Arnold Classic, taking 5th place there, but we have not seen him compete since. I believe he was planning on competing at the Arnold Classic Australia, which was supposed to follow that Arnold Classic Ohio, but it was canceled due to the virus. So hopefully we see Sergio on stage sometime soon. It looks like the Chicago Pro is the next show that he is planning on doing, and it will be a pretty good showdown if we had Sergio and Akim both compete at that show, fresh off of Akim's very impressive Olympia placing in 2020. I don't think that would be an easy win for either of these two guys if that showdown were to happen. So that's something we have to look forward to, seeing Sergio and Akim back on stage, battling it out for that Olympia qualification as well. There's a very short time to qualify for the Olympia this year. And now a word from our sponsors over at Labrada Nutrition.
Come on.
Now, next up in the news, Blessing Awodabu, who has been beefing a lot with Nick Walker, found himself, it looks like, to be in another beef with Michal Krizo, another bodybuilder we've been talking about a lot on this channel lately from the IFBB Elite Pro. A very successful bodybuilder over there. Hopefully we'll see him on the Olympia stage or Pro League stage one day. But him and Blessing seem to be having some back and forth on social media. I've noticed a couple other instances of this, but this one happened on Blessing's latest post. So Blessing posted kind of a video just flexing his bicep, and one of the comments was baby bicep with a laughing emoji, and that comment came directly from Michal Krizo, and Blessing responded with, "Say that to my face." And this story was actually posted by Michal Krizo, screenshotting that back and forth and laughing at Blessing. So what do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comment section below. Bodybuilders getting in Instagram beefs, is it good or is it bad for the sport? My personal opinion, I think as long as it doesn't go too far and there's not like crazy personal shots and we're not talking about people's families and stuff like that, I think overall it's good for the sport. It adds an element of interest to a bodybuilding competition where you're not just watching guys flex on stage out of context. You've got some context, you've got some rivalries, you've got some background to who these guys are and in relation to the other guys on stage. I think as long as it's not crazy disrespectful and crazy personal, it's good for the sport, because bodybuilding at its core, like I said, kind of taken out of context, if you don't know who these guys are and you're just watching a bodybuilding show for the first time, it could be boring just watching guys flex on stage with no context as to who these guys are, how it's judged, what rivalries there are, who has beef with who. Knowing all that makes it more exciting to watch bodybuilding, and I think that's the fact of the matter. I think that's why they have pose downs at all the major shows. Pose downs adds a little bit of drama to the actual show. We're not just watching these guys be compared. These guys get in each other's faces. There's drama. There's interaction. That's what people want to see, is that behind-the-scenes stuff that adds a layer of excitement to the actual competition. Now, next up in the news, I also wanted to discuss this interesting post from a bodybuilder, I guess I should say men's physique athlete, by the Instagram handle Arvind Spartacus. And a lot of you guys have sent me this post asking me to speak on this, and it is a little bit interesting. So you see pictures here of a very muscular men's physique competitor, and he says in the caption, "Disqualified though, but they said I'm not in Indian standards, I'm an international standard physique." So essentially the context of the situation that I was given was that this guy was disqualified from the men's physique competition, essentially for being too big for the division. Now, it looks like this wasn't a super consequential bodybuilding competition. Looking at his bio, he hasn't competed in the NPC or in the IFBB. It says WFF and PCA, so it looks like this is not a problem with an organization that we are familiar with over here. But the way that many people have explained this to me was that he was too big for the division. He was disqualified. So I thought it raised an interesting question. How big is too big for men's physique or any given division, classics, 212, whatever? And should there be a standard that says, hey, you're too big for this category, you should compete in another category, even if you meet the weight requirements, the height requirements and weight requirements for a given division? Should there be a judging standard in place that says, hey, you're too big, you need to compete in a different category? Is that going too far, or is that something that might be appropriate? A lot of people were sending this to me saying, asking for my opinion and saying that they thought it was ridiculous. And I was actually thinking about it, and I thought maybe that could be a good thing. Again, this isn't an NPC or an IFBB problem that I've ever seen come up, so it's not necessarily something we have to be concerned with. But the idea in and of itself kind of makes sense if you think about, you've got a lot of men's physique guys now crossing over to classic because they want to get bigger. And I think the lines are kind of blurred between the two divisions. Once you get so big in men's physique, you say, okay, maybe I can hang in another division. Maybe I can go to bodybuilding. Maybe I can go to classic. So the idea of maybe there should be set guidelines saying, hey, you're too big for this division, you need to either size down or move, I don't necessarily think is a horrible idea. I actually think that might be something that's needed, because I think the lines are becoming more and more blurred between classic in men's physique and bodybuilding. And you've seen this a lot with the women's divisions, figure, fitness, bikini, physique. The lines get really blurred between those divisions. One is just a more muscular version, one is a more lean, one is more soft, and they all kind of look the same across the board, to me at least. To me, the line between physique and figure is very blurred, and I think you might see a similar thing start to happen with men's physique and classic physique and so on. So I don't think the idea of having a standard of you're too big is necessarily a bad thing for these other divisions. But again, not necessarily a problem we have to worry about over here. But let me know your opinion in the comment section below. That's going to wrap it up for today's video, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, in fact, enjoy it. Please subscribe to this channel if you have not subscribed already for more videos like this on bodybuilding news and contest coverage. As always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out.